She thought it was just another quiet lunch shift, until she saw a man being cornered by police right outside her cafe. No shouting, no fight, yet something felt wrong. Her heart pounded as she stepped between them, defending a complete stranger she'd never met. But the moment their eyes locked, she sensed there was more to his fear than he could say. She walked back inside shaken, unaware that the man she just protected wasn't ordinary at all. By morning, her entire life would change. Who was he really? And why did her small act of courage shake an entire city? It was supposed to be just another slow afternoon at the small lunch cafe where Sophie worked. She'd been serving regulars for years, truck drivers, office workers, and the occasional traveler passing through. Her routine was simple: brew coffee, wipe tables, keep the place warm and welcoming. She wasn't rich, powerful, or important, but she cared, sometimes more than she admitted. And everyone who knew her admired that about her. Sophie had dreams, of course, but life didn't give her many chances. So she made peace with the little world she controlled. Her cafe station, her customers, and the brief moments of kindness she could offer strangers. On most days, that was enough. But something felt different that day. Outside the large front window, she noticed people moving a little faster. A tension in the air she couldn't explain. Her coworker joked that maybe the weather was turning, but Sophie felt it in her chest, a quiet heaviness she couldn't shake. During lunch rush, she stepped out back to toss trash when she briefly noticed a man sitting alone on the sidewalk. Well-dressed, quiet, almost out of place. He looked tired, like someone carrying a weight invisible to everyone else. She wondered if he needed help, but the thought passed as customers called her name. Still, that uneasy feeling lingered. Back inside, she tried to return to normal, serving plates, refilling drinks, keeping busy. But every few minutes, her eyes drifted toward the front door, toward the street, toward whatever was brewing just beyond her view. She didn't know it yet, but her ordinary day was already unraveling. And the stranger outside, he wasn't just another customer or passerby. Something followed him. Something that was about to collide with her life in ways she could never imagine. Sophie had barely set down a stack of clean menus when it happened. A sharp, commanding voice cut through the warm chatter of the cafe. "Sir, stop right there." Everyone turned toward the window. Outside, the same well-dressed man she'd noticed earlier was now standing frozen on the sidewalk. Two police officers approached him, hands resting on their belts. Not drawn, but ready. Their posture said everything. Suspicion, hostility, control. And the man? He didn't move, didn't speak. He just lifted his hands slowly, palms open, like someone who'd been through this before. Sophie's stomach tightened. The officers demanded his ID. He reached into his pocket carefully, too carefully, as if even breathing wrong could be dangerous. One officer barked at him to keep his hands visible. The other accused him of loitering, then hinted at possible theft in the area. It made no sense. His clothes alone showed he wasn't some petty thief. But their tone didn't change. Their assumptions didn't shift. And the people watching outside? They just stood there. Sophie felt heat rise in her chest. She'd seen unfairness before, but not like this. Not so blatant. Not so public. One officer stepped closer, invading the man's space. "You match the description," he said sharply. The man swallowed. "Description of what?" he asked quietly. The officer didn't answer. Instead, he grabbed the man's arm. That's when Sophie moved. Instinct overrode fear. She pushed through the cafe door so fast one customer dropped a fork. "Hey!" she shouted. He didn't do anything. The officers turned toward her, irritated. "Ma'am, stay back. This doesn't concern you." But Sophie didn't back down. "It does if you're harassing someone who's literally standing still." The stranger looked at her, surprised, then almost guilty, like he didn't want her involved. But there was also something else in his eyes, relief. One officer snapped, "Ma'am, you're interfering." "No," Sophie shot back, voice trembling but steady. "I'm witnessing." A small crowd gathered now, murmuring. Phones came out. The officers shifted, suddenly aware of the attention. Their grip loosened slightly, but their tone stayed sharp. "We have reports of a suspicious individual in the area," one officer said. Sophie stepped closer, placing herself partly between them. "How is he suspicious? Because he's sitting on a sidewalk? Because he's dressed nicer than the rest of us?" The officers exchanged a glance. Annoyed, cornered, embarrassed. Then something changed. The stranger spoke. "I can show you my ID," he said quietly. "But I'd like her to stay." Her. Sophie. A lunch shift server who didn't know his name. He handed over his wallet, and the officers studied it. Their eyes flicked from the ID to his face, then back again. Confusion, recognition, a sudden stiffness in their posture, like they realized they had made a mistake far bigger than they understood. Without another word, they returned the ID. No apology, no explanation, just a curt warning to move along before walking away as if nothing had happened. The crowd dispersed. The man lowered his hands. The tension broke, but Sophie could still feel it vibrating in her bones. She stepped closer. "Are you okay?" He hesitated, as if unsure what to say. Then, quietly, "You didn't have to do that." Sophie shook her head. "Actually, I did." But before she could ask his name, before she could understand what she had just stepped into, the man glanced over his shoulder, nervous, alert. And that's when Sophie realized whatever had just happened wasn't over, not even close. For a moment, Sophie thought the worst was over. The officers had backed off, the crowd had thinned, and the man, still shaken, seemed ready to leave. But then a black SUV rolled up to the curb, tires grinding against the pavement. Another set of officers stepped out, older, higher-ranking, and far more aggressive. They weren't there to ask questions. They were there to finish what the first two started. One of them pointed straight at the man. "That's him. Detain him now." Before Sophie could react, they grabbed his arm, harder than before, twisting it behind his back. He winced, not fighting, not resisting, just enduring. Sophie felt a surge of anger so sharp it stole her breath. "He didn't do anything," she yelled, stepping forward. An officer shoved her back so violently she staggered, catching herself on a nearby bench. Gasps erupted from the small crowd forming again. The man twisted his head toward her, desperate. "Please, don't get involved anymore," he pleaded, voice cracking. "They'll hurt you." But Sophie wasn't backing down. Not after seeing this. Not after everything. She planted her feet. "You can't just grab him because he looks like someone you don't understand." The lead officer's expression darkened. "Ma'am, step aside before you find yourself in trouble." Sophie lifted her phone and hit record. Too late. That single action shifted everything. The officers hesitated just for a second, but it was enough. The man took a shaky breath, meeting Sophie's eyes, silently asking the question he didn't dare voice. Would they stop? Or would they escalate because she was trying to protect him? The lead officer tightened his grip on the man's shoulder. "You think a video will save him?" he sneered. "You don't know who you're dealing with." The man closed his eyes, bracing himself. Sophie felt her heart slam against her ribs. Every second stretched like wire pulled thin. The crowd grew. Phones raised. Voices muttered. And then the officer reached for his taser. Sophie stepped forward again, shaking but fearless. "Do it," she said softly, "and the whole world will see exactly who you are." The officer froze, because suddenly the man's identity was about to change everything. The moment the officer froze, the world around them seemed to hold its breath. Then, for the first time, the man spoke with a calm strength that didn't match the fear in his eyes. "Check my ID again," he said quietly. Reluctantly, the lead officer did. This time he looked longer, reading not just the name but the weight behind it. His jaw tightened, his face drained of color. Because now he knew. The man they were manhandling wasn't a random stranger. He was a billionaire CEO, the head of one of the city's most powerful companies. Whispers shot through the crowd. People gasped. Someone muttered, "No way." Phones zoomed in. The officers stepped back instantly, masks of authority replaced with panic. Suddenly, they were just doing their jobs, stumbling over half-formed explanations that didn't make sense. But the damage was already done. Sophie helped the man steady himself. His hands shook, but not from fear anymore. From exhaustion. From years of the same treatment no amount of money, status, or success could erase. "Thank you," he told her softly. "Most people don't intervene." Sophie swallowed hard. Most people shouldn't have to. The officers retreated. The crowd slowly dispersed. Yet the weight of what happened didn't fade. Not for Sophie. Not for him. And not for the people who recorded it, because the video spread that same afternoon, forcing the city to confront a truth it kept trying to ignore. In the days that followed, Sophie found herself replaying the moment over and over. The fear, the injustice, the way one small decision changed everything. She hadn't planned to be a hero. She just refused to look away. And maybe that's what the world needs more of. Because this wasn't just one encounter. Not an isolated mistake. Not a misunderstanding. It was a reflection of something bigger. Something still alive in streets, in systems, in the silent moments where people decide whether to speak up or walk past. So here's the question. If you witnessed injustice in front of you, would you step forward like Sophie? Or would you hope someone else would? If the story moved you, let it be a reminder that change begins with awareness. Every voice matters, including yours. So if you believe stories like this need to be heard, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more eye-opening stories just like this one. Your support helps bring these truths into the light.